Being a child almost definitionally fills you with a sense of wonder, a sense of amazement. There are many moments when you're a very young child that you probably don't remember. None of us remember. But one could well imagine being a child and looking at a banana peel on a sidewalk near the curb and seeing how hundreds and hundreds of ants pour over it and finding that particular scene absolutely fascinating, such that you stare at it for a good 5 minutes, which for a 3 or 4-year-old is a significant amount of time. The first time you see a gigantic dog, the first time you see a tiny dog like a chihuahua, the first time you see a skyscraper, the first time you see a huge truck as opposed to a small car, the first time you fly in an airplane, the first time you see a different country. There are many, many, many experiences that are absolutely mind-boggling when you are a small child. And even more broadly, when you're a child. There are things you just haven't seen. As a child, you have an extremely limited horizon of experience. You've seen so little of the world. You've experienced so little of the world. And thus, definitionally, the world has a lot to offer you. Some things, of course, you get over rather quickly. The first time you've seen a really big dog, maybe you find it amazing, then you'll see another one, and eventually a type of acceptance sets in, and it's not a big deal anymore. And that's certainly the case with the banana peel with ants pouring over it at the curb of the street. That's not really a particularly amazing sight. Do you remember when you were a child and snow meant a lot? It usually meant that you didn't have to go to school, that you could play in it, make snowmen, use a sled, go down hills, and just have fun. The association, of course, is just as important as many other things in such cases. Of course, these days, when you get a lot of snow, which almost never happens where I live, it's more a pain in the buttocks than anything else. It will interfere with your ability to get to work. It will interfere with your life in general. Without proper footwear, your shoes might get sopping wet, and so on and so forth. So it is just definitionally the case that being a child fills you with a sense of wonder because everything around you is new. Now, that doesn't mean that once you're a teenager or a young adult that the sense of wonder necessarily needs to cease entirely, or for that matter, the rest of your life. It's really interesting because the topic of today is just that. The internet has been, in many ways, I think, very destructive. It's hard to pass judgment on the internet in its entirety. We don't have stats. Is the internet on balance good or bad? Which parts of it are better? Which parts of it are worse? I lean more towards the negative stuff, I'd say, overall. But as I just mentioned, being an adult doesn't necessarily preclude a sense of wonder, a sense of amazement, and a general sense of interest. Along comes the internet, and initially it's pretty amazing, but what does it do? It creates a horizon of exposure, again and again and again, that inoculates you to potentially new experiences. And it's one thing if you're almost 50, like I am. It's another thing if you're 15 years old. Because a 15-year-old, let's be honest, is still basically a kid. Not a small child, but still basically a kid. Teenagers are basically kids. They have a lot to experience. But if you're being repeatedly exposed to things again and again online, you are circumventing a lot of these experiences that you would otherwise have in life. The wonder, the novelty, that's the big word here, the novelty, and along comes the internet. And what does it do? It short-circuits that. Because a lot of things, even though it's not direct, provide an indirect pipeline to initially novel experiences. And when you're young and you're having them in abundance, that ennui, that acceptance, the adaptation takes place. You're circumventing the natural novelty of life. And when you're really young, you're overdosing yourself on this stuff. And it doesn't matter if the experiences you're having are quote-unquote not real, if you're just getting them secondhand via the internet, such as you're watching a volcanic eruption on the Isles of Indonesia from California. All this stuff over time turns into ennui. You become overly sated. And that, people talk about dopamine burnout, has a huge effect on your ability to anticipate things. And that's what dopamine is all about. It's all about anticipation. It's all about looking forward to things. It's all about that feeling of, wow, I can't wait to see this. But when you already know in advance, oh, wow, I've seen this before, And then you see it again. It's like, this is similar, but maybe slightly different. And then you see it again and again and again. What's left? And I mentioned being of older years, not necessarily precluding your ability to have that sense of wonder, your ability to enjoy things and to anticipate things. And that certainly would have been true back in the days of yore, in a time long before there was any internet, because people were not particularly mobile as a rule. Some were, most weren't. And anything new that came over their way was a big deal. What about now? The internet certainly has, for me, definitely created a sense of burnout when it comes to the exposure to novel things, whether they're novel images, novel visual phenomena, and perhaps more importantly, novel ideas. It seems as if everything under the sun has been said and done and been seen and heard again and again and again. Not for the first time, not for the second time, not for the 20th time, but for the 200th time, the 2000th time. People are repetitious. I know I'm repetitious too. And so slowly we become burnt out on the novel because the novel ceases to exist through overexposure, through constant clicking and skimming through videos. And so it goes ad nauseum to the point where nothing is interesting anymore. Nothing is stimulating anymore. Now, there's a big component here that is related to all this. By now, everyone's heard of algorithms. You know, those things operating in the darkness that are subtly manipulating you. They might not be conscious themselves, but they sure as hell have a massive effect on our psychology. And the problem is these algorithms are curated. So you go on YouTube, you decide to log in, you click on a random video about, I don't know, skateboard tricks. And all of a sudden you're recommended tons of videos about skateboard tricks. Now it's possible you weren't even terribly interested in videos about skateboard tricks. But now you've clicked on it, you start clicking on more and more, and pretty soon, even though you weren't terribly interested, you've had your filling of skateboard videos. You kind of seen everything you feel at least is necessary to have been seen. And you move on. And then you find some videos about orphan bear cubs, and you click on that, and then you've seen everything related to that. Then you get to the more highfalutin stuff, of course, the Jordan Petersons of the world, the intellectual powerhouses, and the Sargun of Dakars. And then you click on those, and then you listen to what they have to say, and you just think, oh, wow, that's amazing. And then you hear more and more, and then it's just all old hat. It all becomes old hat. And the algorithms are a big, big part of it. Because the algorithm imprisons us all. That's especially true as a YouTube content creator. That is a separate discussion. Maybe I'll talk about it sometime. But as a consumer of YouTube content, the algorithm is very powerful. To a content creator, it's all powerful. But to a normal person, it is very powerful. Now, this might not be a universal experience. I've chatted with people that have talked about not having the sense of burnout, of having been overly exposed to the internet, of having seen and heard everything there is under the sun. That's certainly possible. But most people I talk to do not report that. Most people I talk to say they're kind of tired of everything. So you can imagine any number of scenarios that could happen in the world that just wouldn't surprise you. Let's say tomorrow the Cathedral Notre Dame in Paris were destroyed in a massive terrorist attack. Would that really surprise or shock anyone? Probably not. It certainly wouldn't be novel. What if a massive earthquake hit San Francisco or LA? I don't mean a 6 or a 7.5 on the Richter scale, like an 8.5 or a 9. And hundreds of buildings are destroyed and many people lose their lives. Well, obviously that would be terrible. I don't wish that upon anyone. But would it surprise you? Would it shock you? Would it blow your socks off? Probably not. Now, Jordan Peterson right now is working on a book called We Who Wrestle with God. He's become very religious of late, probably because his wife believes that she's been cured of her cancer by Jesus Christ. But do you think in this book you're going to read or hear anything new or novel from him? And the same is true, of course, of video games. Endless repetition, endless burnout. Now, there's some truth to the statement that everything's imitative. People talked about it before. There's nothing new under the sun. Yes. But humans were not meant to be exposed to everything at once within the course of a year or two. And that's what happened. People talk constantly about dopaminergic burnout. Well, where do you think that comes from? When you know what you're going to see, anticipation, which is the basis of your dopamine system, the basis of you looking forward to things, just gets cut out. And it's bad enough when it happens to me when I'm almost 50, but it's a lot worse when you're a teenager or in your 20s. I have friends in their 20s that are completely burnt out on everything. It's very sad to see. It's not that I loved my 20s, but at least there was some novelty to it all. But at this stage, all of us to varying degrees are dependent on the internet. Very few of us have the will or even the desire to completely cut ourselves off from it, live in a log cabin someplace or a mud hut in the middle of nowhere. Sure, that would rewire you. You would have peace and quiet. You would recover in all likelihood. But most of us can't afford to do that. Psychologically, financially, emotionally, even physically, because most of us are not going to be able to live in a mud hut in the middle of nowhere. So we're stuck with this modern civilization. We're stuck with the internet, which is not to say nothing good comes of it. I do learn new things, in a sense. It's just that their novelty is no longer present. Novelty has died. And with that, the feeling of looking forward to things. Anyway, I'm sure many of you can relate to this. So let me know in the comment section. And as always, thank you for tuning in. Many special thanks to my patrons and donors on PayPal. You guys are the lifeblood of the channel. Without you, it could not exist. Thank you very much indeed. As for everybody else, if you can leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe. Apparently it helps out the channel. It'd be much appreciated. If I'm still alive, I'll check you out next time. Until then, may the gods watch over you. Bye-bye for now.
If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.